Welcome back. Today, we're going to talk about obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD. When you hear OCD, what comes to mind? Color-coded closets? Someone who washes their hands a lot? Well, the truth is, OCD is not about being neat, it's about intrusive thoughts, the kind that show up uninvited, terrifying, relentless. And these compulsions, the rituals that people use to quiet the storm, it's not about liking things just so. It's about survival. Today we're going to hear from someone who is going to share a little bit about their story and how they feel when these compulsions take over. It might surprise you on what real life OCD can look like, but I think that we're going to learn a lot about maybe realizing that it doesn't look exactly like the movies portray it. So without further ado, here we go. Hello. So I'm Allie. Thanks for coming today. And if you just want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Kyle Miller. Kyle Miller Coaching. It's good to meet you, Allie.
Nice to meet you. So today we're going to talk about OCD. So would you just give us a little bit of a background on what you know about OCD?
So I would say very much that I definitely have some OCD. I boy, when I think about, and I guess one of the examples that I give all the time is I think about, you put up a shelf in your house, or you have a shelf in your house, and then you think about putting things up on there, and I'm like, oh, well, this is the time when we get the router out so that we can cut little round spots for each thing, because that's where that thing goes, and then we can label all of those, and that's kind of the way that my mind thinks about it. And then to add probably some insult to injury, once, with myself in particular anyway, once I run out of shelf space and I can't have everything super organized in the way that I would like it to be, then everything kind of goes out the window. And then all of the rest of it ends up being a mess. And so, yeah, that's, but really, when I think about it, it's a control thing. And I don't want to say for everyone, but I would say that for a lot of people, we had some sort of trauma, some sort of things go on in our lives. And so that was a way that we felt like we could gain and keep control in our lives. And boy, that's an easy one, organizing the sock drawer, or the shelf, or whatever the different things are. It's very much, I wear cargo shorts or cargo pants, and I wear particular ones because they have the right pockets in the right way, the way that I want them. And then everything, well, this goes in that pocket, and that goes in that pocket. And this is how all of that is arranged. And it always goes that way. And so I'm not the person that, loses my keys, or misplaces, most anything, even through some of the disorganization that I do have, because I try to set up a system where I have, a place for every single thing. And a lot of that is trauma response, I believe. So yeah, keeping the control of one of the easiest things, although it's not easy, but one of the easiest things in life that you can control, where I put my stuff. So that's kind of the way that I think about it and talk about it.
Right. So have you ever had a time where maybe that system failed you?
Yeah. Boy, it is, for one thing, when you're trying to be super organized and, I want to put this away in somewhere that I will know where it's at, and it will make sense, and I'll be able to find it when I need it. And oh my gosh, that just means, like, who knows where you put it, because it perhaps made sense at the moment. But then recalling why did I, and then when you find it, you're like, oh, that makes perfect sense why I would put that there. Probably the only other thing that I would say really is something like laying back in my recliner and having my key fall out, or one of them, or something fall out of my pocket, and it's like, oh my gosh, what happened here? Where did I, but it's usually pretty easy to, because then I can replay my steps and go, where was I? Knowing that I didn't just go randomly put my keys or anything down somewhere. So yeah, there's definitely, I mean, there's downsides with everything, but
Right. And how do you feel like what if there, like you said earlier, like if there's not a spot on the shelf, like what kind of feeling does that invoke, and like how do you deal with that?
it feels like Rain Man. I don't know if everybody's familiar with Rain Man or not, but you kind of, oh my gosh, I got it. And I don't feel that way anymore. I can sometimes feel some of that coming up, because I would say that so much of all of this I have worked through a lot, myself, and so I'm in a pretty good place at this point in time. But I can certainly feel those emotions, and that, it's strange, because I wouldn't call it a frustration. Um, it's I would say it's almost a feeling of like out of control,
Hmm.
that it feels like, and especially when you can't get everything organized in the way that you would like to get it organized. Then there's that strange, it's a feeling in your body, and also, it's very emotional, and I think it's a feeling of loss of control, even though that doesn't quite make sense when you look at running out of space on the shelf to put all of the things. But that's kind of what that feels like, is a feeling of out of control.
Okay. So I'm glad to hear that you don't necessarily deal with that a lot right now, which is great. But could you tell our listeners who maybe are dealing with that what kind of things work for you in those moments, maybe to kind of bring you back to maybe not feeling so out of control and overwhelmed?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, because I've done so much work on my nervous system and emotions and thoughts, and so much in the body as well, and so in those moments, really taking a deep breath, taking a step back, and just, I mean, even just, okay, I'm done doing this right now. I'm gonna go take a break, and deep breaths, or meditate, journal. A lot of those things are really helpful, and I do a lot of that, organization, which I would like to be a little more organized, with everything that I do in my business. And so it's, instead of being things on a shelf, it's all of the digital things that I keep track of, and store and move around, and use, on a daily basis. So wanting all of those things, and that's, it's a perfect example of things where it's like, okay, you're not getting anywhere, you're running into a wall. Let's take some deep breaths, let's take a step back, maybe go work on something else. And I think that's a tricky thing, because I think a lot of times we can get into avoiding, doing that thing, rather than taking a break from it. So that, it requires some extra awareness to really think about what you're thinking about, and step back and go, am I avoiding this, or am I taking a break from it? And it's really okay, on either side of it. That's definitely what I would say with all of it. It doesn't matter if you're avoiding it. You just want to become aware of the fact that you're avoiding it.
Right. Right. And then you said that it is like a feeling of being out of control, even though you're not really out of control because you're just organizing, right? Why do you think it feels like so real like that? Like, Like, why do we feel things that way, do you think?
I think so much of it, and this, I look at so many things, with ADHD and CPTSD and insecure attachment, all of those things. I think the majority of them really stem from childhood, and when you're a child and you don't really have control over anything, that is something that you can learn to have control over, which can then make you feel safe. Which is not optimal, because our safety comes from the inside and not the outside. But we've learned to associate our safety with being able to be really organized and have everything put together in the right way, or do things in a certain pattern. I'm going to do this, and I was trying to think of other things that I do, because it's not just the way that I place things, it's the way that I do different things. But I could not think of something offhand.
It's okay.
aside from that. But it's habits and behaviors. Checking this, doing this thing. Those little, almost a nervous tick, kind of thing. And super familiar with all of it. But I think most all of it comes back to childhood, and that was the only thing that we really knew, because we didn't know how to process our emotions effectively, and to feel and create the safety inside of ourselves, and we wouldn't have had that struggle if we would have had somebody who would have been able to support us in learning how to do that. And so the only thing that we could really do as a child is learn how to, learn to have control over these other little things. This is the way that I do this. This is the way that I do this. And I think that's where the majority of all of those things come from, and certainly maybe some natural tendencies as well, but I think a lot of it definitely comes from childhood stuff.
Okay. And you mentioned checking things and maybe even double or triple checking things. What do you think, are common things that maybe people don't realize? Like, I know, like, sometimes, like, you just kind of sparked, like, double checking things, or like, continuously going back and back and back. I feel like people kind of relate that, they're like, oh yeah, of course, you keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over. But is there a different way that OCD maybe can be presented that maybe we're not as familiar with, or maybe that the movies don't portray?
Oh yeah, well, and I think everything has to be over exaggerated in so many ways in the movies, and I think that much of what it is for most people is much more subtle, and it's much more habitual. I mean, this is just the way, and I think about, I shave my head, and so there is the way that I do that pretty much every single time, and I think for a lot of people, like getting dressed, this is how I do that. When I go to bed, this is how I place. I put my watch and my water bottle and my clothes, and this is where they go, and that's how that's placed. Little things like that, and the way that you wash your hands, the way that there's so many little things that seem super subtle, and they're habitual and they're natural. So it's actually very efficient in a lot of ways, because we don't, there's less randomness, I think, in our behaviors and the things that we do. And so it's, and probably part of that is a preservation of energy as well, because we're emotionally drained. For most of the people, I don't want to say for everyone, but I think for most of the people, that struggle with any of these things really. They're much more likely to be emotionally drained, and so it saves energy to do the same thing the same way all the time, because you don't have to make as many choices, which making choices, it's taxing in ways. So yeah, I think washing yourself in the shower, the way you go to the bathroom, the things that you like, all of those different things. I think there can be an element, because nope, this is how I do this. I do this the same way every single time, and those, it would be very hard to portray that in a movie because they're like, so what, they shaved, or but if you do the same, if it's the same exact pattern the same way, each time, there definitely could be an element of that, which is OCD, rather than, I don't know, I just put on shaving cream, I shave and I put on shaving cream. But if it's the same pattern every single time in that way, there definitely could, it could be just a habit and a routine, but that could be, one of the things that comes from being OCD.
And I'm really glad that you explained that, because I feel like sometimes people are like, oh, they don't have OCD, they didn't do this. And it's like, okay, but like you said, not everything is as dramatic as the movies, right? So thank you for explaining that. And then I also really liked that you mentioned, that it's, I don't want to say easy is not the right word, but because you don't have to make as many decisions, right? I never even thought of it as that way. And, that's a really good point to bring up.
Yeah. Yeah, because we're emotionally exhausted a lot of times, especially in childhood, and so the less decisions that you have to make, which is, all of it all makes sense, and it actually would make sense, I think, for a lot of us to be OCD, because gosh, why would I want to waste any extra energy on making the decision of, where do I put my shoes? Or, these are the spots where my shoes go, and this is how I handle that every single time. And that's where they go. And so, and I like that, even though there probably is an element of OCD in that. But I always know where they are when I want them.
Right. Right. Circling back to a little bit earlier, you said that you had worked on yourself a lot. Would you like to explain a little bit more about that?
So actually, what it is that I do full time, I'm a coach for people that have gone through narcissistic abuse. So I help them, and a lot of that came from, I was in an abusive relationship for 14 years, and did not realize that I wasn't maybe the entire problem for the entire time until almost the end of the relationship. And so, my struggle to be okay after that, and to get help and support, I think, perhaps some of this is OCD, but I started studying personal development 20 years ago, and have just, probably 30,000 plus hours of audiobooks and podcasts that I've listened to, plus all the courses and everything else that I've gone through. And I think a lot of that came from really feelings of not being enough, of not deserving, of not being good enough, all of those things. And so I was searching for, if I do enough, if I learn enough, if I become enough, then maybe someday eventually I can be enough. And realizing, through that journey, of course, that I am enough, and I don't have to actually do anything else in order to be enough. But it's been a really hard journey for me. It's not now. I'm in a better place than I could have imagined that I could ever be in. right now. I finally love myself. You know, it only took me, I don't know, 41, 42 years to get to the point where I actually really love me now. But yeah, the last, 5 years have been pretty rough since that. And it's very much like, it's like pulling each layer of the onion off, and it's a really big onion. So so we continue to find more layers, but in the center is us. It's ourselves. And so it's been that journey for me. And that's really where all of this came from. I mean, I studied all the personal development, but I really had to go to work, and getting therapists and coaches and doing a lot of work with them. But I had to do a lot of work on myself because they were not really very able to help me with what I was struggling with. And so I had to figure out how to present it, how to work through it in my mind so that I could present it to them so they could help me work through the thing that I was struggling with. And that was not a fun experience, but it has also made me a really, really good coach, because that's something that my clients don't have to do. And continually, as because we all have things that we're probably going to work through forever. I don't see an end in sight where I'm like, oh look, I'm healed. And not to, I don't want to throw any shame, judgment, any of that on anybody else, but my experience usually is that the people that are healed and they've worked through all their issues usually have many more issues than everyone else that is still in the midst of the journey.
And I wonder if denial maybe takes, a little bit a part of that.
Yeah, it's easier to deny it or to avoid it than to work through it, which is for all of us. That's and it's another reason that I'm like, I'm not throwing shame, judgment, any of those things, because I avoid all that stuff. I coach my clients and they're like, oh my gosh, you spotted all this, and I'm like, yeah, it's easy for me to spot all those things and help you work through them, but it is a much different situation. We are always our hardest clients.
Right.
It is hardest for us to work through all of our stuff. Because we're inside the jar. We are stuck inside the jar, so we can't see inside the jar. And for everyone outside, they can see those things. Even the people that aren't coaches, they can look at my life and go, oh, hey, what about this thing? Like, yeah, I know. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the midst of working through that. Yes.
So, what do you coach people on specific things, or do you have a range of things? I know you said for narcissistic abuse, but is that the only thing, or?
No, I market myself as a narcissistic abuse recovery coach, but what I really am is a personal empowerment coach. And with most of the people that have gone through an abusive relationship, that is the tip of the iceberg and the result of the culmination of everything else that they've gone through in their lives. And so it's kind of like we work through this abusive relationship, and then I don't want to say get that resolved, but work through a lot of the major trauma and things that are causing issues in their life. And then we go to work on the real work, which is everything else that led them to that point, which a lot of times it's childhood all the way through their life. So yeah, and talking about ADHD and CPTSD and insecure attachment, all of those things. Those are all things that I help all of my clients work through, because it's really a holistic approach. We can't have healthy relationships with others without having a healthy relationship with ourselves. And that takes a lot of work and awareness and understanding, to really bring ourselves back into ourselves, because that's a lot of what I do is I bring everyone back into themselves, and and empower them, and a lot of this is hard. It is the hardest work that you will ever do in your life, is working on yourself and healing and forgiving yourself. So yeah.
And is it something that people need to be like open and ready to do?
I think there's a range, because I think that there are definitely however many people that come to me that they're kind of a wreck, and they're not really very open, and they're not trusting, and they probably shouldn't be. It's one of the main things that I tell all my clients: you have no business trusting me until I've earned it. And I'm not offended by that. I'm not scared by that. But some of them come, and they're pretty open, and willing to face and work through the things. And with others, I know that it takes more time and work and trust and connection and all of those things, in order for them to open up to the point where we can work through, however many of the different things. But yeah, it's very much a range, and I have a lot of people that I think will perhaps follow my content for years and never be willing to reach out. That's kind of the regular thing with guys. That I have, not frequently, but I have infrequently, guys that reach out, and a lot of times the guys are, even though they came to me, sent me a message, asked for help, wanted help, said they were ready for help, and will not get on a free call with me in order to just discuss what that looks like or have a conversation. So that's, I would put them into the bucket of not being ready, and not, not with shame or judgment or anything, because this is hard, and it's in different ways. I wouldn't say that it's harder for men. I think it is harder for men in different ways than it is hard for women, because I think it's just so complex and nuanced. Anyone coming for help, and especially with working with me specifically, I do realize there's a whole nother level of difficulty for a lot of women who come to me, because I'm a man, and a lot of times the women coming to me have been in an abusive relationship with a man and do not trust men, and rightfully so in a lot of ways. So there's an element where they don't want to open up to me, because of the trauma that they've endured because of men. And so I'm very sensitive to that as well, because I realize that it takes that much higher level of trust and connection for them to feel safe enough to open up, and that's ultimately what most all of this comes back around to, is the safety. And if we haven't learned how to cultivate the safety in ourselves, then it's hard to trust other people, and certainly anybody that you're going to talk about probably the most vulnerable things that you could ever talk with anyone about.
Right. Speaking of following you, where can people find you if they would like to reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm Kyle Miller Coaching on all the different social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, yeah, all of it. And then I'm KyleMillerCoaching.com. If you want to schedule a call, get in touch with me, send an email, any of those things. Happy to talk with anyone. The first call, the consultation, it's always free, no pressure. I'm happy to talk with anyone and everyone, whether or not you're in a position where you're ready to get coaching or move forward or not. My mission really with everything that I do is for no one to ever feel alone or hopeless, because I know what that feels like. And I don't want anyone ever, no matter what, to go through that.
Right. And I think that's really a great takeaway. That's part of the reason why I started this podcast, because, it sometimes you just start talking to people and you're like, wait, you feel the same thing? I had no idea. Because it's really easy just to be, like you said, stuck in that jar, and you're the only one in there, and, you can only see what you see, right? So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. We are so much more similar than what we ever imagine, and so many of our struggles that we go through are so much the same as what so many other people are going through. And we just have to find the people, for one thing, and allow ourselves to be open and vulnerable enough that we're comfortable with talking with them about it. And I think it's healing in a lot of ways for all of us to just be open and have the conversation.
Right. Well, is there anything you think we missed, or anything you would like to leave with the listeners that maybe we didn't cover?
I think the only thing that and this is a huge part of everything that I do. I think that kindness and compassion for ourselves is the most important thing, and I think it's one of the biggest things that most of us that have any of these struggles struggle with. And I already know that everybody out there, every single one of you, is going to be beating yourself up, and then probably beating yourself up for beating yourself up. And and I know this is just what we do. It's the cycle, and it's okay. It's okay that we do that. It's something that as soon as we can gain the awareness that that's what we're doing, then that's wonderful, and that is part of working through it. And so through the process, when you're beating yourself up and then you realize that and you're beating yourself up, be kind to you. Take a deep breath, take a step back, give yourself a hug, literally. I mean, and all of these things, it's not what society wants to talk. Society's going to think it's weird and all of those things. And I don't care. I know that everybody out there in the world, for however, not saying that everybody, but boy, a lot of people think that what it is that I talk about is very strange, and that's weird, and people are going to think I'm weird, and all the things. And you deserve to love you in a way that you truly feel it, and you are enough. And so, yeah, and a lot of this really starts with being kind to ourselves.
Thank you. I think that was a great way to wrap up everything.
Thank you. Really awesome. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, you too, and have a good weekend.
Yep, you too.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So after hearing that, I do feel like my view on OCD has changed. I was someone who thought that it meant washing your hands 100 times or flicking on the light switch on and off, which of course there are people out there that is very real, and that is exactly what it is. But it also opened my eyes to realize that it doesn't necessarily have to be that. It doesn't have to be so obvious to us on the outside that people are still dealing with this and still struggling with this in their own lives. And just because we can't see it does not mean that it is not real. So OCD is driven by intrusive thoughts. Sometimes it's disturbing. Sometimes they're violent, unwanted. It's the brain getting stuck in a loop. Thought, fear, compulsion, temporary relief, right? Then you think it again, and then you do the cycle all over. It is absolutely exhausting. So we heard a few things from our guest speaker about how we can get through that and how we can cope with it. But there are also other things that can help. There is such thing called ERP therapy, or exposure and response prevention therapy. This is considered the gold standard for OCD, if you will. And that is something that if you're interested in, I do encourage you to do the research on that, as it can be very overwhelming for people when they go through this. The second thing, like we heard a little bit earlier, is self-compassion. Give yourself compassion. These thoughts that you're having, these rituals that you're doing, these compulsions, they do not define you. They are just part of you. They are not you. And then other people will require medication to help them get through this, or even therapy. And I know some of us don't like that, don't like to do medicine or therapy or whatever it may be. But for some people, this is their lifeline. So if you know somebody or you see somebody, please just give them grace, because they're struggling with their own things just as you're struggling with your own. So again, if you are someone who's listening now and you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is definitely me, you are not your thoughts. You are the person surviving them. And OCD is definitely one of the most misunderstood diagnoses. And I feel like it's also very isolating, because again, sometimes it's not very obvious to those around you. And if you don't want to speak about it, or, maybe let people in on that part of your life, it's very lonely and isolating. So please, if you're going through any of this, reach out to somebody. It doesn't have to be a professional. It can be someone you trust. It could be writing it down in a journal. Just please know that you're not alone and you're not the only one who's going through this. All right. That's it for today. Next week, we're going to talk about ECT, or electroconvulsive therapy. Thank you for being here, for being human, and for letting yourself feel. Just a reminder, this podcast is all heart, not healthcare. Please talk to a professional for medical advice. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon. Share this with someone who needs it, or leave a review. And don't forget, the things you're feeling, you're not alone. I'll see you next time.